I guess we have some data on the outcome of the votes. Kenny, have you seen any sort of initial tallying results yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't really want to go over them too much since voting is still live, but we do have some initial, or I should say, the SurveyMonkey has tabulated most of all of the ballots that have come in, and some of the results are probably not gonna change. So we'll go ahead and put those out as soon as we can. We do need to double check the votes before we do make them public, just to make sure that there are no anomalies and that only the members voted. So I don't want to say too much else, but yeah, the votes are definitely coming in.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. I'm excited. We'll have to. Yeah, it's going to be a priority for the co-op before the next member to have a robust, before the next member meeting, to have a robust crypto voting solution, which means that we are going to have to make sure that everyone who is KYC'd puts forward an address from which they will be voting. So that's good. That's going to be important. So anyone listening to this, in the future, you must have an address associated with your Discord nickname, and you must have a Discord nickname that is marked as having gone through the KYC process. So just want people to be aware of that's a requirement moving forward for participating in governance related decision making processes.
Hey, Greg, one more thing. Yeah. So for those, we have had a lot of reports of people who are looking for their ballots and haven't found them. So there's a couple things you might want to consider before DMing me directly, but also do feel free to direct message me. Do a search for something like either RChain or Ballot. I found that Ballot brought up my ballot much quicker than RChain searches. And then also make sure to check your spam filter. That often is the place where those surveys get delivered. And then the last thing is, and I also posted this in general in Discord. Years ago, you may have unsubscribed from surveys because you got too many surveys from unrelated sources. So there's a link in general to opt back in. And then if you do that, then I send reminders out every couple, like I sent one out last night. I sent one out, I'll send another one out this morning. And then that next email for the reminder should show back up in your inbox. If all of those things, and you must have gone through KYC. If all of those things have been checked and you've done those, you still haven't got your ballot, please contact me and we can work it out. I can create special links just for individuals. I prefer not to. Email is better because it's easier to track, but I can do that if necessary. So thanks.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. That's excellent. Before we move on, I just want to check and see if anyone who was there had anything else to say about the meeting. Any questions, comments, concerns? I know Jim Weitzcarver had a very interesting comment, and I want to return to that. But after we open it up for any questions or comments about the membership meeting.
I'll echo one sentiment that one of the attendees told me. He was traveling from out of town, and we were saying this could have gone better, that could have gone better, really minor points, and he was just saying how important it was to meet, how great he felt about the momentum and meeting the community that was in Seattle and that came to Seattle. And just getting it going, and this important first step, even from a governance perspective, a community governance perspective in that sense. So he was very happy. I was delighted to see that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, similarly, several people came up to me and said that they really, they had a good feeling about the work we're doing. I think that's just as important, right? This establishment of the feeling quality. I think it's really, really important and often overlooked. And that actually directly relates to something that Jim Weitzcarver said that really kind of woke me up. He was commenting on how the format of the The format of the membership meeting was different than the governance meeting we had in September of last year. It's true. And there were some things that we didn't do at the membership meeting this year because we had different aims for the membership meeting, largely, just to give people an update on where the co-op is relative to our stated goals, reminding people what the goals are, and making sure people understood, how the co-op is resourced. Those, and then getting to the membership vote. Those are our stated aims for that meeting. But there are some aims for the co-op that are bigger, larger, that have to do with the vibrant development of our governance model. And in Vancouver, September of 2016, I guess, we introduced, as a way of activating the collective intelligence, some work with games. We introduced a lot more back and forth kinds of sessions, and I moving forward with the co-op, I think that these kinds of things are going to be necessary to build on that good feeling that Ed was talking about, that someone reflected back to him, and that many people reflected back to me, that good feeling then provides a kind of energy to wake up that collective intelligence, and having the right kind of container, such as these sorts of games and other kinds of things, can really help with that waking up process. So I really thank Jim for making that comment, and that will be on the docket for subsequent co-op membership kinds of meetings. So thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Okay, moving on. Just to want to give a quick update about outreach. We're very excited about the work that Dan from Green Kite has been doing to jumpstart a Rolang community here in Seattle. He's doing it for enlightened self-interest. He wants to build an energy efficiency market, an energy efficiency application. He already has a company, Green Kite, that is providing successful energy efficiency services, and wants to now move to expand those services with cryptocurrency, and feels that RChain is the right choice, at least to date. So to that end, he needs a development team that is facile with Rolang and the RChain platform. So he's jump-starting that himself here, and invited me and Kent to give a presentation to the Seattle Rolang meetup at Ada's bookstore. Very, very apt venue. If anyone knows who Ada Lovelace is, at Ada's bookstore. And so we gave a presentation, and this was sort of a warm-up for our or a practice session for the Cancun presentation, DEFCON 3 presentation. But we kind of tag teamed back and forth. Kent presented a walkthrough of the ERC20 token contract, and as questions came up regarding some of the elements in the contract, then I took that opportunity, or Kent took that opportunity, to say a little bit more about the programming model, the theoretical basis, and to compare and contrast it with other existing blockchain models. So that worked out really well, and people came away very excited. There was one seasoned or experienced developer in the room who made the connection to Promella and Spin, and I was delighted. I was delighted that someone saw the connection there. So you can think of Promella and Spin as an earlier generation of the kind of thing that we're doing with Rolang. And so it was really, really good to see that people see there is a thread connecting this kind of work all the way back to the very earliest recognition of the need for formal methods to play a role in mission-critical software systems. So that was good, and we've got the Cancun presentation coming up, and we have the outreach to the presentation to the co-op platform, and we have the developers retreat. The developers retreat is growing, not only because we're hiring some really cool people, but because other members of the community want to participate. So there's going to be more people attending than we had originally anticipated, and that was already a pretty big thing. So it's getting big and prepping us for our first developers conference in about a year's time. So that's good. And Meta, if you're there, if you want to give any more comments on that, I know that you want to introduce some talent we've recently hired. So let me turn the floor over to you.
Terrific. Thank you, Greg. I'll give a brief update and then I will introduce Dan. So our sprint report, we're in sprint number 4. The team is making excellent progress on their sprint. We took on a very large quote unquote commitment this sprint of almost 30 to 40% more story points than we normally did, but the team is very much on track to achieve that. So they wanted to bite off more than they could chew and attempt to chew it. So I'm very pleased with their progress in terms of breaking down their work, laying out a plan, and executing on that plan. So we've got about 130 points done already and about 120 that are in progress. So very, very good progress for the team. With respects to the retreat, we've been putting together a plan in terms of what it is we want to discuss. We have very detailed topics here in terms of our breakout sessions. The structure of the retreat will be a morning lecture followed by breakout sessions, which are kind of listed here, and then presentations on the breakout sessions. So you'll be each of the teams will be presented with a topic or set of topics with questions and or things that we want to gain additional clarity on, and the team will be responsible to drill into those items, come up with solutions, and put a presentation together, and then present it to the rest of the group in the afternoon. So very, very excited. Lots of great topics. It's going to be a very, very productive week. So I'm super excited about that. And my last item is to introduce Dan. Dan, I'm going to have you say your last name when you introduce yourself. But Dan comes to us from Google, where he was doing a whole bunch of advocacy in the game space. Super excited, as Dan is going to be doing developer outreach and helping us with recruiting as well, because we have to grow the team. If we're going to get all this work done, there's a lot of work ahead of us to bring the platform to reality in a very short time. So without any further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Dan so he can say a few words. Dan. You're muted.
Yeah, no, I was just adjusting my camera. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you. Yeah, like Minna said, I was with Google up in San Francisco up until the end of May. Worked on games like Pokemon Go and whatnot, launching on the cloud platform. So a lot of my expertise as a product manager, working on raw infrastructure type of applications for game engines. What I really find really excited about blockchain is I feel like that's really like the next implementation of what cloud could be for everybody. So it's exciting to do that. A lot of what I'll be doing is helping with developer advocacy, technical writing, and things like that. As I said, I did mainly product. Well, I was a product manager at Google, and then I did developer advocacy, which comes hand in hand with it. So I'm here in Austin, and a lot of what I'll be doing is going to developer meetups, trying to get talent to work on the open source project, in addition to educating everybody as much as I can specifically developers, not like a business to business type thing, more so people to work on the project, contribute to it, and actually build applications with it. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Really, really good to have you on board. Very good. So let's see. Another development. Vlad came out for the membership meeting. Came a little early, and we had a really good chat about a construction he's working on. As people may know, if you go look at the Casper repository or go look through the Casper videos, Vlad took the approach of first doing a consensus algorithm just on a single bit, so getting agreement across a bunch of validators in a correct by construction fashion, so they all agreed on the value of a particular bit. And then extended that in some interesting ways to more complicated structures. Last spring, I guess it was, Vlad was out here, and he and Kent, no, I guess it was in the summer. So he and Kent and Mike and I talked through a variation of that where the consensus is on a rewrite system, on the productions of a rewrite system, or the evolution of a rewrite system. Much like you might find with a virtual machine or with the row calculus or things like that. So that was good evidence that the techniques that Vlad was employing were suitable and sufficient in the domains that we're considering. And now, having produced a bunch of different algorithms, all with this same approach, Vlad wanted to abstract the algorithm so that he can describe it for a more general class of phenomena. So we talked through his construction yesterday. In fact, we talked so long we were almost late for well, I guess we were late for the membership meeting. But hey, that's why I'm in this game, is for the tech and the math, among other things. So I'm very excited about the construction. There are a lot of good things about it, and it jives with the work that I've done. That we can take the algorithm and express it at an extremely high level of abstraction to cover a very, very wide range of phenomena. The other thing that I'm very happy about is that Vlad is also coming to consensus on the proposition-based approach that I outlined in the spring of 2016. So his abstraction now explicitly mentions that the estimator takes values in a logic, and the most natural candidate for the logic is a logic that is derived via ladle from the system of values that you're trying to take consensus over. So we're beginning to see significant convergence on at least Vlad's path of research and the path of research that we've been taking at RChain. I'm delighted to see that beginning to happen. And it's kind of important that the research, people like Vlad and Dan Ryan and others, and Vitalik, follow their own path, follow their nose. That's how good research is conducted. And then if through following their own nose, we begin to converge, that's when we start to have confidence that the results are really, that there's some there. So that's, I was very encouraged by that. Any questions about anything that we've covered on the technical front? So let me stop there and check in with the community, take a pulse, and see what folks are thinking. I'm going to have to start hiring some shills to come in and rabble rouse and make this more entertaining. Mike, I know you've been away on vacation, but did you have anything more you wanted to add in terms of technical development? And it's cool if the answer.
So I guess mostly what I did was think about how the ladle stuff fits in with the topo stuff. So the picture we had, and the one we started with, was that we'd start with some theory that would describe a term calculus. Then we'd have another theory of a collection and a distributive law from terms over collections to collections over terms, because collections over terms are what we think of as representability or realizability. And that works so long as we don't expect a specific interpretation of the collections. So for example, we can use the monoids as collections, just lists of things. And for example, if the term calculus is Peano arithmetic, and we'll toss in there a decrement operation that goes from successor to the identity. So there's this extra edge thing that talks about what the dynamics are, because Peano arithmetic doesn't have any dynamics by default. Then we can add into that the theory of a monoid and make lists of natural numbers. And so then we get things like the interpretation of the successor of a list is mapping successor over the list. And similarly, for decrement, we can say the decrement of a list is an edge going from the successor mapped over the list to the list itself. So there are things we can do there that describe dynamics of lists. The trick comes when we are trying to interpret things as sets, so or subsets of the set of all terms. So there we had identified the notion of the successor of top. If we have the ability to say the entire set using top, then the successor of top ought to mean we map the successor over every element in top. But there's no way of writing that down in the language with just the symbols, just the syntax. Mm-hmm. And what we had worked on for a bit was saying, well, top ought to mean oring together all of the elements in the list. But in order to say all of the elements of the set. But if we say oring together all of them, that's extra semantic information that isn't built into just the syntax. And so that meant that we had to go to a topos and look at things that were stronger than a mere Levere theory, but were rather a topos. And so that seemed to build in the notion of a collection into the term calculus, this idea of having a power set or a power object of any topos. And so I was looking at where ladle would fit in to that picture. And it basically turns out that you can still do collections. You just build them out of sets if you move to a topos, or things that are enough set-like that you can think of them that way. For example, graphs are enough set-like. And so we can still add in monoids, but there's this notion of a power object for all these things. If we're just doing sets, then the distributive law goes from the term calculus, and the collection calculus is trivial. So it's from term to term, and it's the identity distributive law. But we have the option of adding in things like monoids.
Cool. I mean, I think one of the things that Mike and I have been going back and forth on is that when you go to when you go to the topos, you end up importing a lot more logic than explaining it, and that's the fundamental desideratum of the Ladle algorithm is to provide a kind of an account of logic which is foundational. And here, in order.
Okay, I guess I must have dropped out at some point.
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought you were done.
Yeah, so Zoom dropped me, and I just rejoined.
Oh, sorry. No, but please. I was just picking up from where you left off.
So where did I leave off?
Well, the last thing the last word you said was monoid. So you said you could add in the monoids, and then.
Oh, right. And so I was then going on to say that it means that we just describe these things in terms of sets, so that we can have, for instance, sets of lists of elements and get quantile semantics still.
Yes.
But it's just the topos is necessary for enforcing some of the semantic constraints that we want to have on the logic.
Right.
If those constraints aren't necessary, if all we want is mere monoids, without having the whole hiding algebra structure and the rest, then we don't need topoi. Whenever we're talking about something like successor of top, where top needs to mean oring together all of the elements, then we'll need the topos there. Right.
I think what I was getting at while you dropped off was just that, you know, the desideratum, the fundamental desideratum of Ladle is to provide a foundational account of logic, and then my discomfort with the use of the topos is that we end up importing a bunch of logic in order to explain logic.
Well, what it's really doing is putting restrictions on the models and saying, for this subset of models where this semantics holds true, we can say these other things. Yeah. But we can't prove it in the general case because there are all kinds of weird models.
Exactly. So I think what is tantalizing to me that is really a sort of stretch goal, something that I keep looking for, is this constant tension between the program and the collection, because the issue with successor of top is that we need to be able to program collections, and so the notion of collection has to be programmable. And so if there's a disconnect between the notion of program that we're considering, the notion of term we're considering, and the notion of collection, then you have to patch over that disconnect, or you have to import your programmability from some other theory. And the question is, can you find some loop which makes the collections programmable in terms of the set of terms that you've got when you need that to be the case, right? So kind of closing up the recursive loop a little bit, so that we don't have to import the power from an external theory. Maybe that's a little too abstract for some, but this idea shows up in almost all the work that I've been talking about, whether it's in the row calculus or the red and black set theory, or the recent work I did on graphs, where I found that minimal model by closing the recursive loop. So I think we might be able to apply the same techniques here, not, if we parameterize ladle in the right way, we might be able to close it up and not have to import topos theory and still get the programmability. But that's sort of far-reaching research rather as opposed to the work that's in front of us. But it's what makes life fun. Okay, so let's see. Thank you, Mike. I thought that was exceptionally clear. Let's see. What else do we need to cover in this meeting? Just so folks know, the position of treasurer is a board appointed position, and I believe there is full board support for Lisa Rice to assume the position of treasurer. So that's will be formalized shortly. But I want to commend Lisa for the work that she's done for the co-op, and thank you for the excellent presentation on the financial summary last night, Lisa.
Well, you're very welcome, Greg. It was really great to be part of the meeting, and I'm really excited about my role to help the co-op.
Awesome, very good. So, and in case people don't know, actually, Alex Balkan, another director, contacted me. There is a kind of worst case tax liability that the co-op is wrestling with, and Alex had some interesting thoughts about how to be at the ready with respect to that, because Coin Fund faces this kind of thing all the time. We have also engaged Hunt Jackson. So I mentioned this. I forgot to mention it at the Hangout last week, but I mentioned it in the Discord channel. So we've engaged Hunt Jackson, which is a local accounting firm, to help us sort that out, and then also begin the process of making sure that all our books have been reviewed, so that the community has this. It's one thing to have the transparency of the blockchain, but if the transactions are not organized in a way that they can be understood, then that presents a barrier to transparency. So we're also trying to get that set up so that people can feel confident that the not just that they can see all the transactions, but they understand what they mean and how they're related to the co-op's aims and goals. I mentioned that also because they're going to be helping us craft a tax strategy. I also mentioned that we are actively investigating that the co-op, whether or not the co-op qualifies as a 501c12. This idea was the brainchild of Evan Jensen, our general counsel, and sitting on the board, and we're interested in basically because the co-op is I see the co-op as a class of public utility. It's a publicly owned and run information utility. And so there's the possibility that we could be interpreted that way and use that to alleviate some of the tax burden. But this is something that the board is actively working on. And if anyone out there in the community has any other thoughts or ideas about this, very excited about that. To hear from you and see if you have some good solutions there. Okay, that's that covers most of the financial stuff. Also, I want to give an update. We're engaging regularly now with Green Kite to help them develop out a business plan, and also engaging regularly with Resonate.is and some of Resonate's partners to look at the requirements for a music services solution that's decentralized. And our aim is to make sure that we have applications that can hit the ground running the moment that Mercury is launched. So we're hoping that in Q1 of 2019 we have some significant announcements about applications sitting on the platform right after Mercury is launched. And currently we're because the Green Kite folks are very proactive, very driven, very self-organized. It's natural to want to engage with them, and the same is true with the Resonate folks and some other folks, which we'll talk about in subsequent Hangouts. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is that the Resonate folks have initiated a dialogue with We Are Europe, who is becoming more interested in blockchain as a means to support the arts and culture throughout Europe. So they are a funding organization that provides funds for festivals and concerts and other kinds of cultural events all throughout Europe. And they're now looking at blockchain as necessary or pivotal infrastructure for their mission. And so Resonate has mentioned RChain as sort of the right platform there. And so we're going to begin engaging on that front, and look forward to that, because as people know, Europe, especially Berlin and other places, is a hotbed of blockchain development. Just as an example, in Berlin, there's Ethereum did have offices there. I'm not sure if they still do, but there's also Big Chain DB, Resonate, and a host of other blockchain efforts in that area. And so being able to have a funded presence in Europe, I think, would be very, very good for RChain. Additionally, in connection with the European development, as a result of the success of the presentation to the H3 Uni people last week, we have been invited to present again to a group around a university in Scotland. So this is a part of developing relationships between the cooperative and the academic sector in Europe. So be looking forward to look in subsequent Hangouts. I'll say a bit more about how that's developing, but this is very much a part of outreach to the academic communities, both from the perspective of supporting them, getting them on board with the possibilities of what becomes possible when you have a scalable blockchain, but also from the point of view of recruiting talent. Right, so there are lots and lots of very smart young programmers who are attending university all throughout Europe, and we want to be able to get them engaged in projects that are RChain related or engaged directly on RChain itself. So that was another very, very positive outcome that happened just this week. And in fact, it may be the case that RChain and H3 University develop a much closer relationship. So that's also in the works, but it's a little too early to talk about that. Okay, I think I've come to the end of my updates. So any questions, comments, any more stuff people want to touch on? The floor is open.
I was just like to, in the member meeting before this, the issue came up of people only having a few hours left to vote, and still a list of people who signed up and paid that hasn't been addressed yet. And I guess there needs to be some board action or whatever if we're going to extend the vote beyond 6 p.m. tonight for the people who were paid and registered before the meeting yesterday.
Yes. So we've tried to address this as best we can. We have been working. I think I've responded to every single KYC request that has come my way. So someone can't vote unless they've gone through the KYC process.
Yeah. Well, there's the list of the people who were signed up as activists and paid and registered that. And HJ, if he's on, can address this. He provided Naveed with a list, and that list has not been processed yet. And I think there's 20 or some number of people that have paid, and I think he said they had gone through. He has all the information on them.
Okay, well, great. So Jim, that sounds like it's a fairly easily rectifiable situation. If they've already gone through KYC, then we just send them ballots and they can vote, and that's not a problem. If they haven't gone through KYC, then again, it's relatively easy to reconcile if they are willing to do a group KYC. So we can open up a Zoom. Basically, no one contacted me about the offer to do Zoom. A Zoom KYC, but if that group of 20 people are willing to do a group KYC, it can all be done in about 10 minutes, where we can get them all on a Zoom channel and take a snapshot of them holding their photo IDs next to them, and getting them to verify their Discord names. Then we can, and at that point, then they've been KYC'd. They can get the ballots and they can vote. So we don't have to extend the vote deadline, which is 6 o'clock tonight, Pacific Daylight Time. If for that situation, if there's other situations, then we'll have to look at that. But thank you for bringing that to my attention, and I will get on it right after this call to see what needs to be done.
This is Damni. I just want to update on this importing list. So we are still working on development side, and in probably few hours we may have that list part of the membership database. We had some technical glitches and we couldn't import that earlier. So our development team is working to import that data.
Awesome. Thank you, Navneet. Well, I'll circle back with you after the Hangout call.
I have a question about the Casper work.
Yeah.
This is a long-term question. After RChain is built, what will happen to the Casper work? Does that get like absorbed, or like, because I know the attention, I don't know how much of your attention is deviated to the Casper work or how relevant it is to building RChain. I'm just kind of like wondering long term, like what happens to Casper? Will that someone else just run that entire research center, or is that going to be also kind of intertwined with what RChain is and where we're going?
So that's a great question. I really appreciate that. For me, it's been important that the Casper work be independent of RChain, so that that work can be done with the highest quality and with the most latitude to make sure that we look at all the different possibilities. And just basically following good research methodology. Very, very timely question. Vlad just came downstairs. Oh, Vlad, Christian was asking.
I can repeat it.
About what?
Vlad, if you're listening, like my question is, in your vision too, because you're pretty pretty much a founding member of the research, but what do you think will happen to the Casper work after RChain is launched? Do you think that RChain would take a more integrated role with maybe absorbing some work, or do you think it will be independent, as Greg just said, as it is right now?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, basically, like, as far as I'm concerned, the research kind of has a life of its own and is not really like that much related to how it gets like funded or any kind of organizational structure. So I'm not exactly sure what you're asking about.
Well, here's what I was going to say in response to the question. So it's been important in the past that it be independent. At a certain point, RChain has to commit to a sequence of implementations of consensus algorithms, right? So there'll be one for Mercury, and then there'll be some revisions, and there'll probably be another one for Venus, and some revisions, and so basically there'll be a maintenance and development cycle around the consensus algorithm, in exactly the same way that there's a maintenance and development cycle around the storage component, and there's a maintenance and development cycle around the communications. There's a maintenance and development cycle around the virtual machine, and all the other major components of RChain, right? So from our point of view, at some point we take over the implementation. Now, the implementation is distinct from the ongoing research on consensus, and we will be funding part of that research because it improves our algorithms. In terms of the longer range vision for Casper that RChain has, which is different from the research, our vision is to completely commoditize the consensus part of the platform, right? So that literally you can. So here's the vision that I've been talking about for quite some time. You take something like K-Framework, and currently K-Framework is the most robust offering of this kind. So you can write out a spec for your programming language or your virtual machine or what have you. And you can add two things to it. You can add the ladle component and you can add a consensus component. And once you've added those two additional specifications, you press a button, and what comes out is a decentralized, distributed platform that implements the semantics of your programming language. So, think, Rolang or Solidity or JavaScript or Java or, take your pick. Suddenly they run against the blockchain. Yeah, as long as there's a bunch of nodes that pick that up and run that there, then that part of it is completely automated. So the only differentiator is the communities that support that particular programming model, right? So maybe in the future, everybody jumps on a blockchain-enabled Java, right? That's a possibility. Who knows? But the main point is that part of the ecosystem is now commodity. There's almost zero value in it, and so that's our vision for the evolution of Casper. Whether that's the same as the vision that Plaid has or other things, they're related, they're interrelated, but they're not the same. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm good unless there are other questions. I thought this was a good hangout, but I'm certainly open to field any other questions.
One last thing, I guess. I was talking to Ed on the drive back. He said that in terms of planning out like other meetings, do you think that eventually we would have the necessity to do like a quarterly meeting? Or I mean, obviously the members meeting will happen once a year, and I understand the Dev Summit that you guys are putting together in Utah that will also be coming up in a month. But outside of those events, as we get closer to Mercury, do you think there will be more events, maybe in January or spring?
There will be more events. We have yet to announce those, but there will be more events. We have to we have to put, right now there's so much on our plate. We have to put our heads down and focus on the events that are right in front of us. But towards the December timeframe, we'll start talking about those additional events. But the biggest event to be looking for is the launch of Mercury and the developer convention that goes with that. So that's the at the Q4 2018. But there will be some events between the developer retreat and then just haven't been able to articulate those yet. One I know that's on the docket that we can talk about, and maybe Vlad wants to say a few words, is RChain is going to be having a governance conference, and we're starting to sort of understand what goes into that and find the venue and those sorts of things. Vlad, did you want to say any more about the governance conference? Sure. I was Christian was asking about additional events. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about the governance conference that you've been driving.
Yeah, so I really want to event. Basically, I've been thinking about blockchain governance. I have a pretty clear how blockchain governance works. I'm going to publish some blog posts, kind of explaining everything. And basically, one of the important thing for any kind of blockchain governance process is that it has legitimacy and people know how to participate. And so there's a kind of procedural fairness and also alignment with the culture that is using the blockchain that's kind of required. And I think that is hard to achieve unless we kind of know what or agree on some kind of principles in a way where everyone knows there's consensus on them, so that these processes have legitimacy.
Cool. So, do you have a thought on the time frame for this?
I mean, no.
Okay.
I mean, not really. No, not really. I mean, some way I'm going to hopefully get the blog post out this week.
But is it a sooner rather than later kind of thing, or
I'm not sure. I'm super hyper focused on Casper right now.
Yeah, understood.
I'm thinking about timing.
Okay.
About anything, but basically, you guys are having this thing in the middle of November with the dev thing.
Oh yeah.
Basically, I think ideally we would get as many stakeholders as possible involved in a process of dialogue about basically principles that could be used for governance of blockchain.
Yeah, and that would be and that's exactly the kind of event where the format would benefit, I think, from the kinds of things that we were doing at the governance conference in September 2016. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. That really helps round out that part of the hangout. I had forgotten to mention that. Cool. Anything else from anybody?
Hey, question. Can we transfer our membership from one person to another person?
Oh, that's explicitly prevented in the bylaws.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Transfer membership from one. Yeah. Anything else? Going once. Going twice. All right. The first RChain Community Hangout after the first annual members meeting is now at 11:56 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time complete. Thank you to everyone who participated, and looking forward to seeing you guys